Hey there, Sharks fans. Welcome to this live rendition of a video. I think I've already titled the Sharks second half, What You Need to Know and Think About or Be Watching For, something like that. Anyway, long story short, I realized that the halfway point of the season already happened between Friday night and Saturday night's game. So I am a little bit late. Here it is on a Monday, but 29 games completed out of 56. 27 remain in 48 days. Think about that. 27 games to go in 48 days. And that's one of the main things I want to get across here in this video. One of the things that I want you to think about is just the crazy nature of this season that remains and the high work volume. This is unprecedented. How many games still remain that need to be taken care of in this season? Despite what we've already been through and a couple setbacks, we'll get into all that. But of the Sharks' final 27 of the regular season, 17 are at home and 10 are on the road. So it does remain, with that theme that a lot of the road heavy lifting has already, fortunately, been done for San Jose. So let's dive in here. When I talk about high workload, January and the NHL was trying to be intentionally loose on the schedule, allow for some flexibility. COVID was still skyrocketing across North America. So 8 games in 18 days. That's one game every 2.25 days. In January, it's only half the month. It was the kickoff following training camps that started on, December 30th, 31st, or around the 1st. February, it gets a little bit looser, actually. Now, for San Jose, only 10 games in 28 days, but they had 2 separate breaks due to COVID protocol issues with them, and as well as Las Vegas. Some games had to be moved around for that. So that's why that number is a little bit different. That's why it's extremely high right there, one game every 2.8 days. But look here in the month of March, and look at April. I mean, these are full calendar months. 17 games this month in 31 days, 16 and 30 for April. That's one game every 1.9 days. And then May, 5 games in the first 8 days of the month. It's an ultimate sprint to the finish. Now, why am I spelling all this out? Because as we look at this Sharks team through the rest of the season, we try and evaluate things. We try and put together some pieces of where are we going, what's happening here. And this is aside from the playoff math. I've already done a video on that. You can check it out here on the channel. I start the video by saying I don't like math. I do like the Sharks, and I don't like the Sharks math. It's very difficult. It's going to be at that point. And right now, they enter this second half of the season on a 4-game losing skid. I made this video before that. They were already going to have to win basically 2 of every 3 games just to flirt with a 4th playoff spot in the Western Division. So this goes to show you the workload that still remains. I mean, literally, it's 4 games every 6 days. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. Repeat. Monday, Wednesday, Friday, Saturday. The Sharks have back-to-backs, Friday, Saturday, I think 7 or 8 weeks in a row. And we're a couple weeks in, and I want to say they have, 4 or 5 more weeks of this still to go. So a high workload remains. Now, I talked about the sequence of games. Here in March, they've already had their 3-day break. That was it. In April, they're going to have 2 separate 2-day breaks. And in May, it's only single days off. But again, it's only the first 8 days of the month. So why am I spelling all this out? Brody, yeah, we get it. It's a condensed season. We knew this from the start. We didn't know, though, that it was going to have its setbacks. Every team is dealing with something, or teams they were supposed to play were dealing with something. So it really condenses here near the end. And I'll be honest, I just saw that the Montreal-Edmonton game for tonight is being postponed. Hypothetically, you're going to get to a point in late March, early April, mid to late April, where these games just cannot be made up unless you want to push the playoffs back even farther. And I don't think anybody's interested in doing that. So I'm very curious to see how the rest of this goes. I'm not hoping for any setbacks for logistical or personal reasons, mostly personal reasons for human beings. But the point in me sharing all this is that a team like San Jose that has struggled this season, no doubt, is trying to get better, is trying to improve. Meaningful practice sessions that they could even have are extremely limited. I mean, you can't expect a team to have a game on night 1, then practice the next afternoon for day 2, and then play another game on day 3. It doesn't make a lot of sense. You can't have your whole team out there. You cannot work on the ice together. And this is especially important for a team, like I said, similar to the Sharks, that's trying to sort through some issues. Realistically, it's a first-year head coach for them in Bob Boughner. Yes, he was the interim last year, took over, filled in, and was given the reins full-time this year. So I'm not saying he's new. I'm still saying that it's relatively early on in his tenure, and all the practice sessions, all the coaching opportunities he has are very valuable, especially with a team that's trying to work it out. Now, players will tell you that they love playing games, right? No player necessarily loves practice days, but they're important. They're important to a team like the Sharks and a lot of other ones in a similar situation. So from a strategy perspective, right, you're down all these practice days. And then the other part about it is that physical recovery time between these games is extremely limited. And I'm telling you, like, look at tonight. It's Monday. The Sharks played Friday, Saturday, had yesterday off, and right back at it tonight. So you're constantly, we could talk about 4 games every 6 days, but go even more narrow than that. You're basically playing three games in 4 nights every week, once a week. Those are rough stretches to come back from over and over and over. How does that affect a team like the Sharks? Well, number one, it's harder for us to assess worn-out players. Right now, I get it. Every player and team in this league is going through something similar. Nobody's got it easier. In fact, a lot of teams I could mention here have it harder, have their schedule harder because of COVID delays and the nature of a condensed season already. So I mentioned it's harder for the team to improve. It's harder for us to assess worn-out players. But, I mean, the other point to make here is that there's definitely an increased injury risk for players logging this many minutes over such a short period of time. I mean, just let me go back to the beginning for just a second here. 27 games in 48 days. That's absolutely nuts. I mean, I honestly can't imagine any situation that a hockey team has ever gone through this much before, let alone all of them basically going through it at the same time. So you can't sit here and tell me, oh, Brody, don't worry about injuries. The whole league will be fine. I'm just saying anything that's been bothering somebody, new injuries can crop up because you're exerting yourself so hard for such a long period of time. Look, we still have, a good 6-7 weeks to go of this season. And it is the ultimate grind from here on out. And not to mention, I mean, look, we've already talked about the Sharks' playoff math. It's logistically possible. It's certainly not favorable at this juncture. But how about for teams that are poised for the playoffs? What do you do here down the stretch? I mean, what a rough platform this is for all the playoff-bound teams. You want to win your division. You want to get that good seeding. You want to play well down the stretch. You don't want to lose any momentum. But at the same time, if you suffer from this grind, I mean, it's going to cost you one way or another. You're going to lose bodies. You're going to lose energy. You're going to lose players. Or you're going to lose your spot in the standings because you take it a little bit easier. And that momentum is hard to replicate once you lose it. So I want it to be established because it's not really being talked about right now. What do the Sharks do in the second half? We're going to get to all the things that have been talked about next. And that's how I'm going to close this video. But here's something that nobody has really discussed yet, is that the nature of this season is going to cloud a few issues as we observe this team. But here are the storylines that I am expecting from and for the Sharks in their final half of this season. Now, I say positioning is irrelevant. Okay, that needs some explanation. Positioning in that you're either in the playoffs or you're out of the playoffs. You're either one of the top 4 seeds in the West or you're not. I feel like judgment-wise, that's kind of the in or out for the Sharks. Don't get me wrong, where you finish in the standings matters for draft picks, okay? And certainly there's something about finishing last or just being on the cusp of a playoff spot and not making it that would make you feel better or worse. But let's be honest, the big judge of this team is, are you in or are you out? So I'm here to say if the Sharks finish 5th or 6th or 7th, I'll cross off 8th. They finish one of those spots. Are they much different from each other? The answer is probably no. So I think that's important to establish. The next thing would be to avoid prolonged skids. Now, they're on a 4-game losing streak right now. It doesn't feel well at all. You can sense the frustration in the team. You can feel like, the human element is there. The progress is not being made. They're enduring this more than they're enjoying this. I'm not saying they're unraveling, but it's clear to me that you can't have this team in their final 27 games go through 3, 4, 5 losses in a row over and over. So they're going to lose some games. I get it. But to try and limit the amount of skids, I think is going to be imperative for this group. For now, and the standings now, but also in the future. Pre-deadline departures, I'm talking about the trade deadline, April 12th, and I don't see additions being part of this, unless you're talking about gaining draft picks back for San Jose. But so I really do feel like if you're going to lose a couple players, which is possible, and I don't know the level of these players, if they're AHL players, NHL players, if they're regulars. Look at that. Now you know the video is live because I X'd out of my own keynote presentation here. But, what level and quantity of players are you going to lose? And then how does that in turn affect what the rest of this season is looking like? So I don't have a prediction on how that's going to go, because really the trade deadline this year is so bizarre, and that the requirements and the North Division has its own quarantine going on still. So not exactly sure how it shakes out. I just know that if there are significant departures, how do you judge the team in the final month based on that? Next thing I'm looking at here in terms of an expected storyline is who emerges. I think there have been some players that have shown spurts this year. How many young players have truly established something new? I'm not saying it's zero, but I'm not saying it's a majority of the young players either. And this is not the video, by the way, for me to go player by player, one by one. I suppose maybe at a later juncture we can do that. This is more the broad strokes viewpoint. So who emerges? Who gets a little bit more playing time? Who gets an elevated role? Who gets an opportunity? Who shines? And I still think we're waiting for that on a certain amount of levels. Or the players that have taken small steps, maybe just a little bit more consistency. And the next topic here is kind of linked to that. I wrote top players maintain. Well, I think what I'm elaborating or alluding to there is, you've seen an Erik Karlsson come back from injury and look a whole lot different and look a whole lot better. You've seen Logan Couture basically lead the way for this team from game 1 until now. And Brent Burns is another one. Not enough people are talking about Burnsy this year. Solidifying his play, doing what he does best, and really tightening up his game in other areas. And it's one of those things where people don't talk about you when you're doing it right. It's like an umpire in baseball or a referee in hockey. In a well-officiated game, you don't notice the refs. When Brent Burns is doing his thing, you notice the offensive contributions, don't get me wrong, but you don't notice, there's no mistakes to talk about. It's because he's tightened it up. And again, I really do think that has been an individual success of this season. So I've named a couple names there. I said I wasn't going to do that, but in this case, I have to. The top players need to maintain a certain level of production and expectation. I'm talking about top players, ones that have already set a bar for themselves in this league. You have a pretty good idea of what to expect. You just want to see more of that. And then last but not least here to close out the video is cohesion intact. We know last year the season unraveled, the players as a group unraveled. We've already seen this year them tighten up and come together when times got tough. And I think even right now on a 4-game losing streak, I'm very interested to see how they bounce and snap out of this. But I think that, if we look at them in 10 games and 10 games after that, and ultimately in the 27 games at the end of the season on May 8th, are they still intact? Is this still a group that's bought in? Despite where they've been, highs, lows, lefts, and rights, are they still bought in? Is that cohesion still there from this group? And if they are, I think that's a valuable thing to carry over into next season. So those are my expected storylines. Again, this is an interesting second half of the season. It's going to come quick and leave quick, and not a lot of opportunity for things to improve on a game-to-game basis, you're just going to have a lot of games. You're not going to have time to fix it. You're literally, on the seat of your pants. Well, that's the old saying, right? You're flying by the seat of your pants. That's kind of what this season is. So they're going to do the best with it they can. We'll see how it ends up. But like I said, those are some things to think about and watch for in the second half of this Sharks season. As I leave you, may I remind you, hit me up on the social platforms, Twitter, Instagram. I post some stuff on Facebook. I'm not there all the time, but subscribe here to the YouTube channel if you don't already. I really appreciate that. Thanks for watching, and I will talk to you next time. Bye-bye.